Welcome everyone to the latest in a series of development and support webinars delivered by the NIHR Academy. My name is Lucy and I work at the NIHR Academy as a Senior Development and Support Manager. This webinar, Inspiring Others with a Clear Vision, is delivered in conjunction between the NIHR Academy and Capfinity, our leadership programme partners, and will be facilitated by Jane Kemp. Jane has extensive experience in coaching and leadership development and helps people to find positive solutions to make their working lives more successful. She's passionate about getting to the heart of an issue or challenge and enabling someone to see that within them, they have the power to change things. Jane, I'll now hand over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lucy. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you all for joining. I can see the numbers racking up, which is great. As Lucy said, my name's Jane Kemp. I work as an associate coach with Capfinity. I am lucky enough to work on the Future Focus Leadership Programme with NIHR, and it has been an absolute privilege for the last 4 years working alongside your colleagues on that programme. I am an executive coach, so I've been working for 15 years as a coach, working with teams and working with individuals. Before that, I used to work in qualitative research and advertising and brand strategy. So I know about the importance of having that clear vision, whether it is as a leader, whether it's for your team, whether it's for your brand. So I feel very passionately about what we're talking about today and the power that that clear vision can have when guiding your team. So please do use the chat box as we go through, and as Lucy said, make sure you put your questions in the Q&A box because we will have 15 minutes at the end of the session for a Q&A. So get your questions in there. Gonna start off just by asking you a question. So if you wanted to become a world record holding athlete, at what age would you need to start training? Write it into the chat box. If you wanted to become a world record holding athlete, what age would you need to start training? Put your thoughts in. Charlotte, thank you, starting us off. 16, we've got 7. Oh, wow, look, here we go. 4, 5, 15, 7 months. We've got everything. We've got a spectrum, but I think, we've got until 20. Depends on the sport, as early as possible. So let me share with you a story. I'm going to share with you a story about a runner called Steve Way. Steve Way hit 33, and at 33, he described himself as a weekend warrior. He might do a bit of exercise at the weekend, but he was mostly interested in, he smoked 20 cigarettes a day. He was a frequent drinker, and he, as he said, almost had an addiction to takeaway meals. However, his weight then hit 100 kilograms and his blood pressure was getting alarmingly high. And at that point, Steve thought, what could I do? And he made the life-changing decision for him to start running. And so incredibly, after just 3 weeks, he ran a marathon. And he completed his first marathon in the time of 3 hours and 7 minutes. He then went on to do another marathon a few years later, where he was the 3rd placed British athlete behind Mo Farah at number 1. He also now holds the British world record for running 100 kilometers in 6 hours, 19 minutes and 20 seconds. So he went from, as he describes himself, couch surfer to world record holder in just 6 years. So yeah, Bruno, like it, good genetics. So in just 6 years, he turned, at the age of 33, he was becoming a record holder, and then went on to represent Team GB in the Commonwealth Games. Anybody inspired by that story? Put it in the chat box, yes or no. What's your thinking? Is that inspiring for you or not? So yes, wow, 100%. Never too late to try something new. We've got some no as well, never too late, an outlier. Okay. Brilliant. The reason for asking that question is, and I fully expected it to be inspiring for some people, but not inspiring for others, because the thing that inspires each of us is different. And I think that is the challenge for us as leaders, is how do I find the thing that's going to connect with my team's values, with their purpose, with their drive, with what motivates and inspires them. And it is going to be different. So what might be really inspiring, for example, Steve, for some of us, absolutely isn't inspiring for others. So that's what we're going to look at today, is how do we get to the essence of what is going to help to inspire our team. So we're going to start off by thinking about, what do we mean by inspiration? And there are inspiration researchers, Thrash et al., and they identified inspiration as that light bulb moment. So it's that moment when something hits you out of the blue, and it's spontaneous, which is the challenge, therefore, as leaders, is how do I find that thing that's going to spontaneously, it's unpredictable potentially. It's when you suddenly see those exciting possibilities, that kind of like, aha, wow, and you have that surge of motivation. So for Steve, that surge of motivation was suddenly, I want to run, and I want to see how far I could run, and I want to see how fast I could run. And that motivated him to keep going. And that inspiration inspires us to achieve difficult goals over extended periods. And I think that is the really important thing as leaders, is that inspiration keeps us motivated over time. And often we're working on projects that are 3 years, 6 years, 10 years, potentially even longer. That is the power of inspiration, is to keep us motivated over that period of time, to keep our teams motivated and working over that period of time, because there will be those highs and those lows. If I, to think of an example, probably, I think in the last year, I was lucky enough to work with the team at NIHR who were exploring, how do we get different people into academia? So in those underrepresented communities who aren't necessarily working within NIHR, how do we get some people to think, actually, yeah, I want to do this research? So it might be, for example, midwives. Might be, how do we get more nurses into academia and to completing the research? And the light bulb moment for me was actually, I sat and I thought, I really want to do a master's. I really want to. I loved studying psychology. I haven't done it in any great depth for a while. So actually, during that day, I thought, right, I want to do a master's. And previously, I've just put up barriers as to why it might not be able to happen. But I felt so inspired after that day that I came, being in this room full of people who I found very inspirational, that I came away, I found the masters, I found the university I want to do it at, and I now have a plan as to when I can make it happen. So that inspiration has helped me to get over those barriers that potentially before I would have put in place. So I'm just going to encourage you to think about a time when you've been inspired. What was it about it? What was that aha moment for you? And I'm going to ask you a question. So would you rather have, I'm just going to flick back off that for a second. Would you rather have £50 now or £100 in 1 year? So just put into the chat box, 50 now or £100 in 12 months' time. Thank you, Janelle, you've started us off. 50 now. We've got a mix. 50. I wish, sadly, I've asked this question. I don't have a way or the means to get the 50 or the £100 to you, but 50 for the MOT to play. So we've got some in 100 as well. So I think 50 now, the time preference. Okay, let me show you, let's explore what's going on there. So often what happens is, as humans, we are often not known for our ability to delay gratification. So the benefit of £50 now means I've got it, I know it's happening, whereas actually often what happens is our motivation drops over time. And this is known as temporal discounting. So any rewards or punishments that are further away in the future often have less impact on our behaviour. And I know this from when I was working in advertising and looking at lots of the NHS advertising campaigns. Things that were, it will extend your life by X amount, often had very little motivation because it felt too far away versus what is going to happen to me now. And I think as leaders, we face a similar challenge. So how do we keep people motivated when that strategic goal is 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years away? And that is where inspiration can come in. That is where inspiration can help us as leaders to keep people motivated. That inspiration provides that motivation. If we go back to Steve, when he's got to go out running and it's dark in January at 7 o'clock in the morning and he's got to get a long run in before he goes to work, that inspiration of, well, I could be running a marathon or I could be representing Team GB can be the thing that help us to get through those periods of potentially lower motivation. So let's have a look at this. This is the benefits. So giving us that sort of longer term future vision to keep us going. And as I said, sadly, I don't have £50 or £100, but thank you for participating and having a think about it. But so let's look at the vision ingredients. So if we're trying to create this motivating vision, let's look at 4 key ingredients. The first of this is the output. So within our vision, we need that output. What is it that we are trying to achieve? What is the goal that we're working towards? What's the action that we want to achieve? Within it, there then needs to be something that is unique to us. So what's unique to the team that's working on it? What's our team's unique selling point? What are we going to do differently versus another team that's working potentially on another university in another country on something similar? How do we differ? Is it about our experience? Is it about our drive, our passion? Is it about a tool that we're using that somebody else isn't using? A piece of research, a piece of equipment? Crucially, and I think this is often what we miss, potentially sometimes we forget about point 3, which is the human connection. So who are we doing this for? What's the community, the place? What are we going to improve? Who are we going to improve by doing this? And then point number 4 is the quantification. So by how much? Is it that I'm going to try and change something for everybody? Or is it specifically that I'm working on people with this particular heart condition? Or is it that we're working on this particular group of young adults? Or is it that I want to do this specifically for people living in a certain area of the country, of the world? So the quantification, how big is this? The quantification is really important because it enables us to see whether we're achieving our output. So for example, if it is I want to be every customer satisfied every time after every interaction, I can then quantify that. I can complete surveys to find out whether every customer is happy. If they're not, what is it that I need to do? So we're going to take each of these, but let me give you, I'm just going to work through it with an example. I was thinking about inspirational leaders, and obviously the kind of key big ones who've been written about a lot in history and management documents come up. But I was thinking about somebody slightly different. I was thinking about Greta Thunberg. So Greta Thunberg kind of accidentally became a leader of a movement. So her output, the desired output she wanted to achieve was action on climate change. As a young teenager, she thought it was being ignored. And so therefore she wanted action. She wanted global world leaders and leaders of her country to take action on climate change. Then the twist, what was her team's USP? Her team's USP was that it was going to be actioned by school children. That's unique. It's not people attending COP 24, 25, 26, 27. It was school children. The action, that was the unique part. It was school children who were going to take this action. Human connection, who will we help? We will help our future. So it's the future of school children. It is our future. How are we going to improve communities? We want to improve the world because they wanted action on climate change. The quantification. So in terms of what they were going to do, how they were going to do this was through school striking, and it was going to happen every single Friday afternoon. Greta Thunberg was going to walk out of school and sit out on the steps of Parliament, and what she was encouraging was school children across the world to do exactly the same. And through her very clear vision, I think she managed to persuade, it was something like 1.4 was it million or billion children to do exactly the same. And so whether we agree with her method or how she was doing it, she had a very, very clear vision that enabled other people, without meeting her, to get inspired and to get behind that vision. And so we're going to take each of these 4 different elements and have a look at them. And so we're going to start off with the output. What is it that we want to achieve? And I'm just going to give you some examples here. So 4 examples here, and I'd like you to put into the chat, first of all, any that you find inspiring. So I'd love you just to put into the chat box using the letter I equals, and then number 1, 2, 3, or 4, any of these that you find inspiring. If that's 2 and 3 for you, put I equals 2 and 3. Thank you, Emma, you've started us off. Emma, 4, so to create a future without dementia. 2 and 4, so to end homelessness in your nearest city and to create a future without dementia. Seem to be coming out consistently as highly motivating. Highly inspirational. So I'm going to ask a slightly different question now. And there's also some a bit of 1 and 3 as well, but the ones that seem to be consistently coming out are 2 and 4. So similar, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, but in this case, I'd like you to put an A for achievable. So which feels achievable? So of these 4, which are the ones that feel most achievable to you? So 1 feels achievable to be a mistake-free week, this team this week. 3 is coming out. So 3, to have monthly team building activities. Okay. So when we're creating a vision, the reason for asking you this, when we're creating a vision, we want the output to be inspirational, but we also want to get that balance between making it achievable as well. So for example, if I was to be Steve Way and say I'm going to run a marathon in three weeks' time, that wouldn't be inspirational for me because it's completely unachievable. There is just no chance. So we need to get that balance between making it inspirational, making it feel challenging, and making it feel a stretch, but also achievable. So let's explore how we can do this. So if it is too easy, it can lack motivation. So it can feel, yeah, that feels too easy. So therefore it's not inspiring me. It's not that aha moment. It's not that, wow, this is something I really want to work towards. This is going to motivate me when things are difficult, if it is too achievable. So not making mistakes might feel like, yeah, that feels like a good thing to do. It's achievable. It's not necessarily going to inspire me. For somebody else, it might be inspirational. But what we're trying to do is get the balance between achievable, but also inspirational. So we might get achievable, but at the expense of it being inspirational. On the other hand, what we could end up with is something that is highly inspirational, but completely out of our grasp. So for example, as I said, the example of me running a marathon in 3 weeks, amazing. It's not going to happen. So it feels too unachievable. It's too much of a stretch. So the more inspirational we go, the better our roadmap of how we're going to achieve it needs to be. So we may well need to break it down. And if you look at the e-learning module on this, there are many more details on how you can create that roadmap. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that module on this. So we may feel overwhelmed if it's too inspirational. The other thing that is really important is the inspiration needs to tap into something that is unique about our people. So it needs to tap in to our interests, our values, and our passions. So if it's not aligned with those things, then it isn't necessarily something that's going to drive our behaviour. So if I give the example of Greta Thunberg, it clearly motivated and tapped into 1.4 million school children's interests, values, passions. It could also have been an afternoon off school, which might have tapped into it. So maybe it was the mechanism that tapped into it. But actually, that is important, and therefore it is essential that we understand who is our team, what drives them, and their interests and motivations might be different to mine. So therefore what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for them. And in order to inspire us, it has to resonate with them, because we can't do it without aligning to their interests, values, and passions. The final thing when we're thinking about that output is it needs a clear strategic direction. Does it fit with the organisational goals? Does it fit with our university, our academic team? Does it fit with the hospital? Does it fit with the organisation that I'm working in? If it doesn't, we can end up with that conflict, and actually people aren't able to allocate their time, their resource to it, because it's at a conflict with the strategic goals and the direction that the organisation is heading in. So we need to get the balance between these three to make sure it is inspirational, but it also feels like it's achievable. It fits with our goals, fits with our values and our team's passions, but it's also aligned with the strategic direction of the organisation. That final part is also crucial, because that's where we get the stakeholder investment. So we need to find the balance. So we need to find the balance between those different elements. And I think it was Jack Welch, who used to be the chief executive of General Electric, and how he used to start, in order to define the vision and the output, was he used to start with, I think he used to call it a dreaming session. And so he would get the team there to think about the company and to think about their output. So it was coming up with those longer term possibilities of what is it that we as a team, what's our goal, what's our vision, what is it that we're working towards. The benefit being, if everybody's involved in it, hopefully there is that buy-in, there is that team buying in and finding that inspiration together. So it's trying to balance those different elements. So that's the first part, of thinking about the output, making sure that it's inspirational, but also achievable, and fits with our strategy, but also has that sense of purpose to drive and motivate us. The second part we're going to look at is the twist. What's unique to your team? What is it that is different to the team that you have got working on this vision to potentially another team in the university, or another team within your practice, or another team within your hospital? What's unique? And this could be any number of different things. So it could be the expertise that you have. It could be a piece of technology or resource that you have available that isn't being used by other teams who are working in a similar field or in a similar area. It could be the history, the experience that you have, or it could be the quality, the accuracy. So it could be one unique thing, or it might be a combination of several. I worked within one team where the USP of this particular company and their vision was they based it all around quality and accuracy. And it was 90% of people who attend one of our training sessions, webinars, workouts, will rate this session as very good and excellent. And so that was their USP. And therefore, that was the thing that when you were working for them, with them, That was the kind of guiding principle, that was, this is what's unique to us. They had the output, but actually in terms of how we delivered it, that was the thing that was unique. If anybody can think of anything from your team, what is it that you think is unique about your team? Please pop it into the chat box. So if you've got a good example of a USP, so that unique selling proposition from your team, what would it be? Any examples in the chat box? What makes your team unique? Kiko, thank you, starting us off. Interdisciplinary, diversity, skill mix. Skill mix is non-standard for research settings. Expertise, your unique expertise. Quality. A group of clinically experienced AHPs with advanced research skills. Stakeholder engagement, specialism. Thank you. Really quickly, you've all come up with some brilliant things that differentiate your team. This is the unique way in which we're going to do it. This is why it is different for our team. And we've got led by a nurse who is a professor, all driven to improve end-of-life care using research. Fantastic. So the difference that your team has, your USP. And again, that helps people feel bonded into the vision. This is what we do. This is why it's unique to us and to our team. Okay, skill mix with excellent research experience. Thank you, everybody. So next up, the human connection. So this is the part, how do we make, and I think I saw somebody say earlier in the chat, the importance of that human connection for them being the thing that really inspires them. So who is it that we are helping? What's the community? What's the cohort of people? What will improve for people because of our vision? And I'm just going to show you a couple of charity advertisements. And I would like you just to have a think about what similarities. So just take a minute or two just to read these, and then just start writing into the chat box. What are the similarities you notice across these two adverts? Thank you. Quick way to action, poor state, images which prompt an emotional response, visual appeal, a shock tactics, thank you, sad eyes, sadness, visual images, so the emotionally driven. Okay, thank you. So emotion, catchy. So what they are both using is the who we are helping, who we are making a difference with, to draw us in. So we've got Elsa, we've got Archie. So it is using that exactly, it's creating that connection. I was going to say a human connection, it's a canine connection. So creating that connection with who is it that we are helping, who is it that our vision is going to help. And this is used a lot by charities when door knocking, when advertising. Often they personalize where the money is going to. So yeah, so like Archie Childlet House, thank you. So Richard, giving the reader a sense of empowerment, as in you can help with this. I think this is really important when we're creating a vision as a leader, because often people might be quite disconnected. So I, as somebody potentially working in IT, how connected am I to the end user? So therefore, that's the importance of having that vision that connects me with the person or the community that what we're doing is making a difference to. Equally, when we're 8 months in and we're buried in all of that data, it can be really hard to remember what's the human connection, who is it that we are helping by doing this. So it's the importance of helping us to feel psychologically closer to the individual, the community, whoever it is that we're helping. So it's we can do this in our vision statement. We can do this, it might be in the visuals that we use as has been done here, but helping us to connect with the people that we're helping. So thank you. So looking to evoke empathy and compassion. So I guess when you're thinking about your vision as a team and as a leader, think about how can I connect us? What are the things that I can do to connect us to the people that we are helping? There was research once, it was conducted looking at a call centre, and they had two teams working in this call centre, and the call centre was trying to raise funds for people in students in developing countries to finish their education. And they noticed an enormous difference. One group, they met the students that they were helping. And so rather than it being, hello, would you like to donate money to students? It was, hello, would you like to donate money to students like Kyra, who I've met? And they were then able to bring that to life. They had a direct impact and a direct understanding of who it was that they were helping. And unsurprisingly, the group who had met the people they were helping, there was a significant uplift in the amount of money that they raised, the amount of donations that they generated. So when we're thinking about crafting our message, it's thinking about how can I make sure I'm building that human connection. The final thing we need to look at is the quantification. So when we're thinking about our output, how big is it going to be? So for example, if I go back to the Greta Thunberg, the quantification, this needs to be every Friday. What we are doing is we are going to be striking every Friday. And what do we want? We want all world leaders to start talking and taking action on climate change. So it was inspirational. It was a huge ask in terms of what they wanted to achieve. So this next section is hopefully going to help us to explore how we position the quantifiable part. So I'm just going to ask you two different options here, option A and option B. So this is the quantification section. Which is more inspirational to you? Is it to develop 3 million vaccines, or is it B, to ensure no parent loses a child to polio again? Okay. So pretty unanimous there. Everybody's gone with B. Any thoughts? Write into the chat box. Why B? Why is B more inspiring to you? What are your thoughts? For those of you who's written B, yeah, thank you, Sam, starting us off. Personal connection. I'm a parent, so I can connect into that. It's emotive, it's relatable. It's got that direct human connection, and that direct impact shows the impact. So these two can be exactly the same, but how we position it, how we frame and what we want to achieve has an enormous impact. And there was research conducted in 2020 by Nabi et al, and they talk about message framing. So it can be the same information, but how we frame it is completely different. So for example, when we're buying mince in the supermarket, it could either be 10% fat or it could be 90% lean. The message is exactly the same, but I've framed it differently. So if I'm interested in lean, then it's going, oh, 90% lean sounds much better than 10% fat. But equally, if I want there to be the fat, the flavour, for example, maybe I'm more motivated by 10% fat. So it's worth thinking about for your team, what do you think is going to be more inspirational to them? And therefore, how do you frame the message? What we want to be doing in our vision is getting that, depicting a positive future. This is what we're aspiring towards. This is what we are working, striving hard towards. So therefore, the thing that, as you say, will, I think we've got maybe trigger emotion, or maybe it is that personal connection that we're going to be connecting with, that we're going to be making. Thinking about how you frame that message can have an enormous impact. So when we have those options, think about what's going to be the most motivating way when we're in those really difficult, challenging parts. How do we frame this quantification to inspire people and to drive people? Okay, so let's just review the 4 elements. So the first up, we've got the output. So this is our desired action, where we're heading towards. This is our goal. Then we've got the twist. So what is unique about your team? And I loved how quickly you all put into the chat box the different things that was unique. Maybe it was the diversity, maybe it was the having a nurse as a professor, maybe it was the expertise that you have that other teams don't have. And then the importance of that human connection. And we saw in the charity examples about how you bring that into those people to life, whether it is through images, whether it's through names, whether it is through telling their story. So thinking about how you can inspire in your vision by connecting with your audience, connecting with the people who are going to be benefiting from this. And then finally, it's the quantification. So, and thinking that not all quantification is created equal. So think about how do you create that 90% lean if that's the thing that's going to motivate. How do you do that? How do you create in your vision that no parent ever again losing a child to polio? What is it that is going to be the hook and be the inspiration for your team? So once we've created our clear vision, we've gone through. Actually, I'm just going to ask you a question. Which of these 4 do you think is most challenging for you? Just write it into the chat box. Give it a number from 1 to 4. Which one do you think is most challenging? Okay, so we've got a lot for 4, the quantification. And this is where I would really encourage you to be working with the team that you're creating a vision for. So actually thinking about, we might have a sometimes if we go too extreme on the quantification, we end up with, for me, right, you've got to run a marathon in 3 weeks. It's too much of a stretch. Whereas actually if the quantification was, why don't you run a 10K in, not 3 weeks, but why don't you run a 10K in 2 months? Okay, yeah, that feels that feels like potentially that could be possible. Or the quantification of, I'm going to have finished my master's within the next 7 years, or within the next 2 years. Okay, that feels doable. Whereas actually, sorry, 2 years doesn't feel doable for me, but 5 years feels doable. So it is thinking with your team about what feels possible. And I think, again, we've got 2 has come up quite a bit, the twist, so your team's USP. Work with your team. What are the unique strengths that you have? What's your way of working that you have that not necessarily everybody else has? Is there a piece of technology, a piece or a resource that you have that makes you unique? Is there a way in which you work that is unique? Is there expertise and diversity within the team that doesn't happen anywhere else? So I think to do that, you really need to sit down as a team and explore that. Before we go into questions in a few minutes' time, and please do write any questions in the Q&A box for us to go through. Something that can be really useful once we've created this vision as a team is thinking about ways to, how do we keep it top of mind? And I'll just give you a few examples of different ways to keep that mission front of mind. So Amazon's vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. So that's their vision. We might agree, we might disagree, but their vision to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. So in terms of how they think about things, what they used to do is in every meeting of the executive team, they would have an empty chair. And the empty chair was a visual to signify the customer. And so in every single executive meeting, when they were making big decisions, they had to think, what would our customer think? And I guess this is the same as having our PPI participants. But that was for them, that was the visual in every meeting. They couldn't make a decision without saying, what would the customer think? Airbnb, their vision was to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. And so what they did to bring this to life and to make this live as a vision was they gave every single employee, or I don't know whether it's every single employee, but they allowed their employees to have $2,000 of Airbnb credit. And that $2,000 of Airbnb credit meant that their employees could work in different places. So you could finish one day based in Amsterdam, and then the next day you're dialing in from somewhere completely different so that you could work from anywhere. And that $2,000 enabled people to actually live and breathe the vision, which had an enormous impact on morale of the team working at Airbnb, and enabled them to actually see that vision and remember that vision on a daily basis because they were experiencing it. And even if they weren't experiencing it, potentially somebody else in their team was at that time. The final one, in terms of keeping the vision alive, the final example was the GB rowing team. And I think this was back in 1998. They had Not a Great Olympics and they wanted to turn things round. So the Not a Great Olympics in 1996 and wanted to turn it around for 2000. And so their vision was to become, they wanted to become the world's best cohort, the world's best rowing team. And so their overall vision, they distilled down to, will it make the boat go faster? And this became their motto. And they used this motto to help them to win a gold at the Olympic Games in 2000. But what they did is it meant that every single decision that they made, they had to ask the question, will it make the boat go faster? So if we change our diet, will it make the boat go faster? If we were to change the cars that we drive that help us to drive to the rowing venue, will it make the boat go faster? And it meant that they could, just by having that one line, they could, all decisions, they could run by that and think, are we spending our effort in the right place? And if we're not, what could we be doing? So I guess a really important thing is to think about, for you and for your team, once you have the vision, is there a visual that could bring it to life, like the chair? Is there a one line that could help bring it to life, or is there an action you could take that might help to bring it to life? So that's my final challenge for you, is to think about how can you make sure that we're remembering this at all points. And what I'm going to, if you're interested in this, if you complete the poll at the end of this that will be shared, if you complete the poll and enter in your email address, you'll be sent the slides, and in the slides it will include extra resources in terms of for you to read around or to find some more. There is an interesting, it's very short, it's about a 4-minute video of Simon Sinek talking about what makes a meaningful vision. And he just mentions 3 different things that can help to bring it to life. For a longer watch, you can look at the Building a Vision, How to Think About the Future. And if you want to read more as well, there are 3 articles. I think the top one's particularly good. So 5 reasons your employees don't understand your company's vision or your team's vision. So I guess have a look at that and think, is our vision falling into this or not? So as I said, if you make sure you complete the poll, put your email address in, you'll get a copy of these slides, and you will also have these links to all these extra resources. And we've now got time for questions. So I know there have been some questions coming through as we've gone through. So Lucy, any questions?
Let's have a look. So thank you, Jane, for delivering such a powerful and interactive session as well. That was really lovely. So there's still time for attendees to send in their questions if they'd like to. So you can do that by clicking on the Q&A button. You can also send them in anonymously and upvote any existing ones that you want to see answered as well. So I'll have a look at the moment to see what the most voted question is. Look. So first question for you, Jane, is it truly possible to balance inspiration, achievability, strategic direction, and people's sense of purpose?
Okay, so I guess the short answer is yes, but the longer answer is it's challenging. It is difficult, it is challenging, which is why I think the idea of the General Electric CEO of having everybody together in a room really helps. Because actually, if I create it, it might not be the vision that works for everybody. It might not be just exactly as the example that we saw at the start with Steve in terms of his running. It inspires some, it doesn't inspire others. So therefore, what I find inspirational might not necessarily be what's inspiring for others. So I think when we're creating a vision, don't rush. Be prepared for it to take time, be prepared for it to involve people, and be prepared to maybe we need to tweak it, maybe we need to flex it as we go along. So I'd say, yes, it is possible. Is it easy? Probably it's not gonna happen in half an hour.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Jane. So next one on the list that we've got, a lot of upvotes on this one actually, and I think will resonate with a lot of attendees on this webinar. So how do you continue to inspire and motivate staff during prolonged periods of change and disruption, particularly when morale can be low?
Yeah. I think that is where that clear vision really becomes essential, because actually through times of change, we need that. Well, why are we doing this? And again, I'd recommend looking at, so we have Simon Sinek as one of in the reading list, and we have the 4-minute video. He also has done a lot in terms of start with why. And he has a book and he has a podcast all about start with why. Often what we talk about is what we need to do and how we need to do it, and we forget the why. I think during times of change, during times when it is difficult, that is why we need that inspiration. And that is why we need to keep people connected with it. That is when we need to be having those team meetings, those team conversations to go, why are we doing this? Why does this matter? So I think that also might be where we need to flex it slightly and go, is this vision still relevant? With the change in political climate, or with the change in funding here, or with the change in other teams working in this area, is our vision still relevant? If yes, let's remind ourselves of it and why we're doing it. It is inspirational, but it's a challenge. If not, how do we tweak it? How do we make it so it still inspires us, fits with our values and fits with our purpose?
Thanks very much, Jane. Perfect. So we'll move on to the next question. What should we do if our vision is disrupted by changes within our team, our department? I guess that leans in very much, doesn't it, into the last question, thinking about those changes, that might prevail and the kind of, adjustments that you can make there. But I don't know whether you've got anything to add, Jane, on that one.
I think we might need to adjust it. And because we might have agreed on a vision, but actually things have changed significantly. So we need to tweak it. So we need to go back and say, is this a 10% change we're looking for, or do we need to make a more significant change? So I think it is going back as a team and thinking, is this still relevant? Is this still what's inspiring us? Does it still strategically fit? And if not, if it doesn't strategically fit, then we're going to need to think about how can we adjust it? How can we change it?
So next question, that's voted. How does feeling inspired differ from just feeling positive about the future?
Okay, I think that the inspiration, I think there are times when we can feel positive about the future. It isn't necessarily going to be the thing that drives our performance when things are challenging. So I think that positivity and that optimism can wane in exactly the two examples that you've just shared, Lucy, in the questions, when maybe things are veering off track. So I think what inspiration does, and that vision, what the vision does is it gives us that underlying motivation. And it gives us that motivation potentially when we're not feeling so positive because it's a time of change. But actually, I'm still inspired and motivated by what it is, the longer term goal that we're trying to achieve. So I think it's, if we go back to the £50 and the £100, I might feel great once I've just been given that £50 and can pay for my MOT, or it can go towards my MOT. But 2 weeks later, when things are tricky again, I might not be feeling so positive. Whereas actually, if I'm still buying into our longer term vision and inspired by that, I think it helps to keep us going and to help break down any barriers that might be in our way of achieving that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about keeping that focus on it, isn't it? When you know, when times can be challenging, having that clear vision and like you say, adjusting and keeping a real focus on that and keeping the team inspired. Absolutely.
And there might be times when, so thinking about when we're going through a time of change, what we might say is our vision is still right, but how we achieve it has to change. So we think the output is still right, but actually how we're going to get there needs to change slightly. So maybe we need to change people's roles. Maybe we need to change the quantification. So if the quantification was we're going to achieve this within 3 years, potentially actually because of what's happening, we need to be more realistic, and that changes to 5 years potentially.
Perfect, really useful. Thank you. So we'll
Right.
move on. List keeps growing. We'll move on to the next one. So what advantages does creating a vision have over merely setting goals?
Interesting research, and I want to make sure, because actually I've got a piece of research in front of me that talks about exactly this. So interestingly, for us as leaders, lack of strategic vision is one of the key drivers in leaders losing their job. So actually, we as leaders really need that clear strategic vision versus just having goals. But equally, it can help with things like team cohesion. So it can help keep the team together. So I think particularly when you think about that USP, what's unique to us as a team, it can really help to build that feeling of we're in this together. And it can help with things like innovation. Equally, it relates to having that clear vision can also have an impact on stress of employees. And this was a piece of research conducted in 2020 by Newton and team. And they found that by leaders having that clear vision, rather than just having clear goal, that can reduce the stress of people who are working in that team. Because I know why I'm here. I know what I'm working towards. I know why this is important. And inevitably, with any vision and with any project we're working on, there will be the ups and there will be the downs. Just the goal in itself and merely setting a goal might be a short-term goal. I can achieve that quite quickly. Or actually the goal becomes irrelevant because the political climate has changed or the climate within the university has changed and we can't do that anymore. But actually that vision of this is what I am working towards hopefully has that longevity to keep us motivated, to keep us feeling like a team working towards something, and to hopefully help reduce our stress.
Perfect. Thank you, Jane. Let's look and see what we've got next. So next question, why is it so difficult to predict when inspiration will strike?
I think we sort of tapped into this earlier on. If we think about, because what inspires us each is different, that's why it becomes really hard to say, do you know what, if I do this, I know it's going to inspire Lucy. Because it comes sort of from bottom up rather than top down. I can't inspire you. It has to come from within. It is that moment where I think spontaneously, oh, that seems really interesting to me. I'm really excited by that idea. If I give the example from, for me, when I was in that room with people talking about how do we increase the number of people who go into research and who are applying and have greater diversity within the cohort of people applying for NIHR grants and funding. I think what I found it really inspiring was not that anyone was trying to do anything directly to me, but I was listening, I was taking it all in. I was thinking, Yes, it comes from the individual, which is therefore why I think as a leader it is so important to understand within your team what's the different context of the individuals, what are their values, what drives them, what's their purpose, what motivates them. And that will look different. So therefore how I do it will be slightly different with different people. And again, I think that's the value of discussing it as a team.
I think that's really helpful. Looking at a couple of questions here, there's definitely themes coming through in terms of, you know, that kind of common goal, like you say, across teams, working with different personalities and characters, and perhaps when team members maybe don't necessarily kind of see eye to eye or get along, how that can be, you know, achieved by creating that vision to achieve a common goal there as well. So I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that, if there's maybe a difference of opinion or you know, kind of teams maybe aren't working as well as they could be, how to use a vision to bring them together.
And I think that is a challenge. That is a challenge. And that is because in a team of individuals, and we want a team of individuals rather than everybody thinking the same, there will be challenge. There will be challenge where for some people what's motivating is not for somebody else. I think the importance is that you discuss that. You discuss, and that's not always possible because we might have created the vision and then we have a turnover in people who are working as part of that team. But I guess it's sharing the vision, sharing the why, where has this come from, and people feeling that they're able to input into it. I think it's also allowing people to personalize the vision for them. So there might be a part in it. So Lucy, you and I, if we were working on the same team, there might be a part of the vision I find much more motivating than the part you find. And by having those different elements to it, it now enables individuals to personalize it and go, actually, this is what it means for me. I don't doubt that if we take the example of Airbnb, what that looks like, that is probably completely different for different people, the idea that you could be at home anywhere. And there will be people that work at Airbnb who think, yeah, I want to be at home in my home. And for 3 weeks of the year, I would very much like to use my $2,000 going to this place. Whereas there'll be somebody else who sees themselves as a digital nomad and they say, yeah, I want to spend at least 6 months of the year using that and flexing that, and I'm able to. So I think importantly, we need to allow people to personalize the vision for them. What does it look like for them? So Greta Thunberg's vision, 1.4 million school kids were buying into that. I don't doubt it looked different to different children.
Thanks very much, Dane. That's really, really helpful. Just conscious of time, I think we'll wrap it up there with the Q&A. But thank you so much, and I hope everyone has found this webinar beneficial today and feels able to implement some of the behaviours we've explored and some of the themes as well that have come out of the Q&A. So all of our past webinars can be found on our NIHR TV YouTube channel under the Development and Support Webinars playlist, and we'll put a link to that in the chat box for you, so you can have a look there. There's lots and lots of webinars up there, so we strongly encourage you to go and have a look at any different topics that you might want to tap into. You'll also find links in the chat box for our online leadership e-learning modules on NIHR Learn. They're available for anybody to utilise and can be completed within around 40 minutes per module. So if you've got a spare hour in the week and you want to kind of do some learning on demand, please feel free to utilise those. We'll also put a link in for the Academy events page so you can keep up to date with any up and coming events that we've got over the next few months as well. So thanks for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. As always, if you've got any questions or queries, you can contact a member of our development and support team at the email address, which we'll also put in the chat box. So thank you very much, and thanks so much again, Jane. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.